Welcome to the meeting tonight. There's a lot of new faces here. There's a lot of older faces. Not talking about your age. But before we get started, I thought it'd be nice to go around the table and we just have everybody introduce themselves, and that way we'll get a sense of who we have at the table. So I'm going to start on my left. So Glenn, if you could start off.
Glenn Hawkins. I'm from the LSD of St. George. Retired from every power.
You work with Wade?
I did.
Yeah. Al?
No,
I'm not going to talk. No, Sam, you go ahead. What do you introduce yourself?
Oh, hi everybody. My name's Sam Walsh. I'm with the LSD in St. Patrick, and I live in on Fine Road in Bocabac and work for the fire marshal's office through the day, and that's what it. Glad to be here. I've been here for a couple of years on the board, and for a few years on the PRAC committee as well. So.
I'm Al McCaffern, Mayor St. Stephen, and this is I guess I did the tail end of the first, so this will be my third 2.5 terms out here now. So welcome to the new people that are here today. I'm looking forward to working with you. And, yeah.
I'm a new guy.
Yeah.
My name is Brian Glebe. I'm from Shamcook, represent Shamcook LSD. Live on Shamcook Lake, which is a great place to live, and we want to keep it that way. And I'm retired.
Yeah, thank you.
Weston Gambler, the mayor of Harvey Station. I guess I've been around quite a while. Not too long, but anyway, I'm still here.
Must be doing all right.
Dennis Blair at the LSD Academy / St. Croix. I've been here, I think, 8 years.
Heather Hatt, Fundy Bay, and I live in Back Bay. And I've been here for a while too.
Wayne McQuarrie, Penfield, and I've been here last year. Anyways, I'm semi-retired. I'm gonna work in the wintertime this station.
Harvey Matthews, Campbell, Mayor Campbell. I'm a pressure beam, whatever else you want me to be lately.
Hi, I'm Sheena Young, and I'm the chair of the LSD of Deer Island or West Isles, and I'm an entrepreneur.
Jim Tubbs, I'm chair of the LSD of Dumbarton. I think this is my 6th board that I've sat on, 6 years on this board. So welcome to all the new people.
You guys know me.
I'm Ken Stanix, the mayor of McAdam, and I've been here not as long as some of these guys, but longer than some others, and looking forward to working with everyone. Thank you.
I just want to compliment the chef in case anybody hasn't yet.
Yeah, I was going to get to that. But then we had Trish and Carol both, so our thanks to both of them.
So you guys on Zoom, you're next.
Yeah, I'll go Wade Greenlaw, LSD Dufferin.
Thanks, Wade.
And I'm Bonnie Morse. I'm the mayor of Grand Manan.
Thank you. Welcome. Now we have some other folks around. I know we have a couple of visitors, so I'm going to break precedence here because I want everybody else to introduce themselves as well. So why don't we start with Rhonda over in the corner? Rhonda.
Hi everyone, I'm Rhonda Dillon. I'm the regional management coordinator for Region 10, and I reside in Tower Hill.
Thank you for coming today. Justin?
Yeah, I'm Justin Hatt. I'm Heather's son. I'm just here because I drive her here.
Well,
yes.
Well, thank you very much for coming.
Yeah.
Guys?
Annette Towns, LSD St. James.
cousin again.
We're cousins. We didn't know that until we were at a party one night. We got talking to one another and started making connections.
I work at the school more.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's me.
Trish Dickerson, I'm a program coordinator for the Service Commission.
Mark?
I'm Mark Porter, I'm your financial officer.
He tries to keep us straight and does a good job of it. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for the introductions, and welcome everyone to the meeting. Before I call to the order, I think we need to make a motion to appoint a secretary for the board this evening. So we have Trish Dickerson. She is, as she introduced herself, she works here at the landfill, and we need to have a secretary. Our secretary is away, so we need to appoint a secretary for this evening. So if someone could make a motion, I'll move that.
I'll second that.
Jim, thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Now, before I get into the rest of the meeting, as you know, Claudette's son Avery passed away recently. So I was wondering if we could just take a moment of reflection. Okay, so we'll call the meeting to order, and we have acknowledged already our two visitors, Justin and Rhonda. At this point, I have to ask you all to see if you have a conflict of interest with any of the topics that we're going to be dealing with this evening, and if so, you must declare. So does anybody have a conflict of interest this evening? Adoption of the agenda. We have a couple of things that we have to look at in this agenda, and before we do that, there's another thing we need to do, and that is to appoint a board parliamentarian. Al served as the parliamentarian for the last couple of years, I think. And so we need to appoint someone as the board parliamentarian for this year. So do we have any nominations?
Well, I think we should go with experience and ask Alan from you.
Okay. So we have one nomination. Any other nominations to act as a parliamentarian? Any other nominations? I think I've said it 3 times. I'm not repeating myself. Any other nominations? Okay. Alan, welcome. Thank you very much for accepting that.
I only had to speak up twice over the last few years, so I'm not very good job.
Next thing is for the agenda. There's been a change brought forward. And Dennis, I'm going to turn it over to you.
I'd like to make a motion that we add to the agenda on the track motion. It's in there as a motion. We'll be changing that to a notice of motion. That's it.
Is that just for the second part?
Yeah.
Yes, just for part 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions on the agenda? Okay, can I have someone second Dennis's motion? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. So the agenda is adopted with the change as recommended by Dennis. Has everyone had a chance, I hope everyone's had a chance to look at the minutes of April 22nd, 2021? I know they were all sent out electronically. Does anyone have any questions or comments on the minutes of April 22nd? If not, could I have someone move that the minutes be adopted as presented? A seconder? Okay, Heather. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Thank you. Okay. Business arising from the previous minutes. I don't have anything listed here. Is there anything anybody wants to bring up? New business, the draft of the 2022 budget presentation. And Paul, so I think that's going to be your baby.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Here. Share the screen. Okay, so I'm just going to go through a quick. In your board packages, you should have the summary of the budget. It's not obviously the full budget document, but the summary of changes. I'm just going to go through some of the highlights of the 2022 draft budget. So the proposed 2022 budget for SNBSC is a total of $5,913,223. The 2021 budget was $5,845,765. So the total year-to-year difference in our budget is $67,000, 1.14% more than previous as the total budget. There are no ticketing fee changes proposed for 2022. Local planning charges will increase slightly. And cooperative regional charges will increase significantly, and that's due to the recreation cost sharing policy. So I'm going to go into each one of these things. The solid waste revenue is projected to be $4,520,000 This is about $524,000 less than 2021, and this is mostly because we had a large withdrawal from the post-closure fund last year that went into surplus. And we did that because we adjusted how we calculate the closure fund. So we had that large injection last year, and that's why there's this much less revenue predicted for 2022. It's not that there's less money coming in, it's just we had a big surplus because of that. So our surplus heading into 22 is going to be about $546,000. Yeah. Our expenses for 22 are largely unchanged for solid waste. We're starting to see some of the results from some process improvement and some other improvements that we've done that's reflected in the projections, some efficiencies that we're seeing. Our capital budget for 22 is going to be $1.119 million. And that's all going to be funded out of operations, so we don't need to take anything out of capital reserve. In local planning budget will increase from $649,296 to $720,872. Higher cost is because we've had a lot of increased activity in that department, just the building boom and the need to increase capacity in our building inspectors, both from the qualification level as well as adding another one. Just FYI, the one that we added is actually a solid waste employee as well. So what's happened is we've shifted his wages from solid waste to local planning when he needs to be in, and we can shift back. So it's not like we have to hire and fire here. We are also going into 22 without the benefit of surplus. We have been going into 21, so that's affected our budget. So the cost per assessment, I know we look at that sometimes. It's going to go back to about what it was in 2020. Assessments were based on last year, so if we don't have any anticipated major expense increases in 2022, that figure is going to go down because everybody's assessments are going to go up. in 22. It's just the price of houses has shot through the roof, building has gone through, you know, it's just, so as the assessment base is going to go up. We don't anticipate any actual increase in dollars in expenses, so cost for assessment should go down if you want to look at it that way. And I did a little bit of a comparison, just so you can see how we're doing. And I'm only looking at 21 budgets of some of the other regions and us. So in 21, our budget was $649,000 for local planning, and that's serving a tax base of 2.2 million. And that cost for $100, if you want to break that out, is about 3 cents. Is actually 2.994 cents or something like that. So when I compare that to say Kent region is very similar to us. A lot of small towns, a lot of rural population. Their budget was $770,000. They serve pretty close to the same tax base as us, and their costs in 21 were 3.4 cents. Through Fredericton in here, their planning budget is 1.477 million. They serve 4.766 million of tax base, but that's because their biggest customers handle. They don't do the planning service for Fredericton, but they do it for rural community Panwell, which has an enormous tax base. So they get a pretty good economy of scale there. Sussex is again another region very close to us when it comes to planning. Their budget is very close to ours at $650,000. They have a far smaller tax base that they serve. So their cost per $100 is 3.8 cents. And Acadian Peninsula, their local planning budget is 1.33 million. And they serve, you know, just over 3 billion in tax base, and it works out to 4.4 cents. Not sure why their costs are that high in Acadian Peninsula, but anyway, I just want to show that to you folks just so you can see how we stack up against everybody else. So in our cooperative and regional, our budget was 151,000. It's going to go to 671,000, but that's because of the regional recreation cost sharing. It's included in this budget. Otherwise, expenses are very similar. And we have a small surplus that we are projecting going into 22. So the rate per 100 assessment will go from 0.43 cents to 2.41 cents. So that includes that 2 cents for recreation. A corporate, we always have a corporate, which is the stuff that gets spread across all three. It's down slightly because we have some lower anticipated building costs, and we've done some repairs again this year. And that's it. Do you have any questions?
Just a comment, I guess a good question. Is it our American funds why ours is better compared to Kent?
American?
Yeah, like the money we bring in from that. Is that something different that we have?
Well, that'd be solid waste. So
yeah.
Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
That's a local plan. Yeah, those were all just for the local planning. That
just local planning.
Just local planning.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So like our planning department is 650,000 this year. Our solid waste is 4 whatever.
Okay. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Just on that, on the American stuff, because we had a little bit of a touch and go situation here. Our biggest American customer was sold. Very good customer. And they were sold to a much bigger outfit that actually owns their own landfills. So we immediately thought that, okay, so we're going to say goodbye to this piece of American business because they have their own landfills. However, since that time, we've been in communication a couple of times with the new owners, and they're very happy with what they've got here. And they would rather sell their engineered space at a premium because it's a lot more money. They charge a lot more than we do. So they would rather sell that space at a premium to their other customers over in Maine and continue the relationship we have and the system we have now. So we've seen no change. So that's good news. However, when Mark and I were going through the budget, we still figured that we might lose half of that customer because they're going to do some kind of an efficiency adjustment at some point. You know, they can tell me all they want, they're going to continue to do things, but I'll wait a year and we'll see how it goes. So conservatively, that's where we are.
Any other questions on the draft budget? Okay. Thanks, Hollis. We'll move into the committee and staff reports. The executive director's report is the first one.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not going to read every word that is in the report I sent out in the package. But I will just go through a couple of highlights. Our waste is, again, it's tracking on exactly where we expect it to be. In solid waste, our public drop-off area is now open and operational. It's been very well received by people who are using it. We had a couple of growing pains when we first opened it. You know, people still going the wrong place, and we managed to get some signage up to make sure that they wouldn't miss it. You know, for those of you that went on the tour, you see a big arrow right in the middle of the road. It's kind of hard to miss. But since that time, it's been working very well. Our landfill gas expansion project is probably going to, well, the piping is probably going to be done next week. And so that's connecting all the wells that we drilled last year to the piping system. And then the next step is going to be what we do with the gas. If we can get the flare going for a reasonable amount of money, that's what we're going to initially do, and then figure out how much gas we have and what it actually consists of before we see what next steps are. The initial cost to get the flare going was way out of anything we expected. So we're looking at different steps before we take the plunge there. So more to come on that. The planning department, you can see the graph there that I sent you. It's you know, 2020 was a record year in the planning department for building permits and inspections and all that stuff. And 2021 is blowing 2020 out of the water, and they have just been flat out. You know, it used to be to turn around the building permit in 48 hours. It's more like 2 weeks. You know. There's a lot of complicated things that are happening too. It's not just people building garages and simple stuff. There's a lot of complex structures and things being built. So that's added into this mix of what we're doing. We were looking at a piece of software that the province kind of really wants us to use for, it's called Clouds Permit for building permits. It's a nice piece of software. It's really expensive. So there is an application afoot for RDC to help out with the cost, but even after they help us out with the cost, I have a hard time justifying it. And I had some questions about the software myself because it's a proprietary system. It's a single, this is the only thing this vendor does. They're a small vendor. It's a tech company. I know how these things go. 3 years from now, they'll be bought by a much bigger company. Things will change, and how locked up is our data, and how, you know, I have concerns about how we can migrate from that system to a different system if we have to, if they have this, you know, over barrel. So I got concerns there, and it's still really expensive. So I really don't think we're going to go in that direction, even though the province really, really wants us to. I don't know who got that deal, but I don't think I'm going to. Some other news. So I had some meetings with Eastern Charlotte Waterways about Project Village, and I included the power share fact sheet with folks. And they had an open house last night before last in Blacks Harbor. There you go. Yeah. Yeah. The whole Project Village thing is really, really interesting because it's not just about cars. It's, you know, they have a piece of land they want to develop into affordable housing, and then they want to do indoor farming where the freshwater was. Really kind of cool stuff. And this, the car thing, I wasn't sure about it at first because it didn't seem to make sense to me. It seemed like this odd car rental. It didn't make sense to me. But now that I've talked to them about it, it actually does kind of make sense what they want to do. And the idea is these cars are going to be available to organizations like us or other nonprofits or even municipalities if they need an extra vehicle, but they don't want to go the full step of buying another vehicle. This car will be available to those organizations for a membership fee, and they haven't worked out the pricing yet. It's interesting, and they're all electric. It's something that for the planning department might be interesting as an overflow vehicle. The building inspectors tend to talk the two vehicles we have there, but we have a lot of other staff there that are always on the move for other meetings and things. This might be an option. It depends on, I have to weigh out if the mileage is going to be cheaper than using this. So it's kind of an interesting project. So stay tuned on that one.
Oh, the information here says there's 4. Are there 5?
4 so far.
Okay.
So local governance reform stuff has been fairly quiet. I understand that the minister is setting up some meetings with LSD folks. I'm not privy to any of that. Other than that, I have heard no new news except that the language from when they're going to release the white paper is now the end of the year. By the end of the year, whatever that means. So, sorry, I don't have more on that.
There isn't a preliminary document going to be released in September. It's called What We Learned.
Right.
Yeah, so that would be maybe be able to read between the lines on some of it to see what direction is going in. But that was announced in the paper the other day, and it was supposed to be this fall, and then the white paper by the end of the year. So after they release the What We Learned document, then they'll have some more meetings and some more input based on that, and then go from there. So
we will see. I've been in contact with our MLA here, Kathy Baucus, about erecting a cell tower. And I said we would provide the land, no cost. It would be an easement or a $0 lease, because we're right in the middle of the hole of cell service, right here at this landfill. And she took it up with a few departments, because if the line can't make a business case, sometimes the government will fund those towers. So she did, and I got a call from the Department of Finance Monday, and wanted some more information. So the process, there's no guarantees here, but entirely possible we will actually have cell service here at some point in the future.
I thought it was federal.
For
cell towers.
What about?
I thought that was federal.
No, RDC will provide funding for. Yep. I guess the final news is we are in space right now. I've got Starlink hooked up to this building now and the entire site through our fiber network. So means we just had better connection here. So
okay.
That's my report, Mr. Chair.
Anybody have any other questions on the report? It's very quiet question. It's good. Okay. We'll accept the director's report, and we'll turn into the strategic plan update.
So the strategic plan update isn't a lot of an update. What you have here is a lot of things that have been ticked off over the past couple of years. But I do want to take this opportunity, the strategic plan update, to, we don't have to start talking about it now, but I think in the fall, we need to start gearing up to revisit this whole strategic plan. Just like we did a couple of years ago before the pandemic hit, and we created this particular plan, it's time to maybe go back to it where a lot of items have been checked off, and revisit it and see, and especially now that half the board is new, maybe there's a new direction we want to go, maybe there's more things we want to talk about. So I would like to, and I don't know how the board wants to handle that. If it's an ad hoc committee, if it's you just want to get together as a committee at the whole, if you want to make some plans, and we don't have to make those decisions here tonight, but I do want people to start thinking about how we're going to address the next version of our strategic plan.
I think you're right. It should be a committee.
So is the existing plan complete then? And
it's not complete, no. But
there's not still a bunch of stuff to do on that one, or
yeah, there's a lot of it has been we've addressed. Okay. So it's time to, it's a living document, right? So it needs to be looked at holistically, and this is up to the board, of course. I mean,
Wouldn't it be advisable to have the lady back here again that helped us on it last time?
She retired.
She did. Okay, I guess we can't have her.
She might still be doing it actually on her own, but she retired from, she was the executive director of Cooperative Enterprise Council in New Brunswick, and she did retire from that position.
I think she is doing some private stuff.
She might be doing private stuff, and she did like you guys, so I might talk her to come back.
Hollis, this is Wade speaking here. Just wouldn't we be better off to wait to see where the local government stuff lands after the end of the year before we do the strategic plan, so you can take that into account and make sure that, you know, that we're moving forward from that platform rather than have to change everything later on.
Point well taken. You know, it depends on what you're expecting out of local governance reform, I guess, but again, it's board decision, so where you want to go.
How about we think about it for a month? We'll come back on the next month and we'll revisit that. Wade brings a valid point, but then on the other hand, you can't wait forever for a document that may or may not appear. We did that, didn't we, Wade, just before we recessed for the summer. We were waiting for some documentation to come forward, and it didn't come forward until after we were done. So anyway, it's a valid point. We'll take that into consideration and revisit this one in the next meeting.
Maybe what Sam mentioned, if the preliminary paper comes out, what we learned, maybe we can kind of, you know, springboard off that and kind of guess where we're going. You know, like you say, the end of the year might come and they might not do anything. So we can't wait too long, but we should wait a little bit.
It gives everybody around the table on the board to have an idea and get their thoughts together a little bit on what it is you'd like to see RC 10 do. So, okay, good. Any other questions on that one?
Just yeah. Down under regional planning activities, is that same package we're talking about, right?
Regional planning activities.
For regional housing research and all that sort of.
Yeah, that's stuff that we've done.
Yeah. Did you have any luck with the application for housing stuff there, getting data and something we should talk about too with the region?
Yeah. Rather have Xander speak to that directly.
Okay, so maybe
I don't want to screw it up.
Okay, but just as long as it's moving forward, so maybe we can have Xander come in.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
You can know that actually.
I suspect all of our communities are running into housing issues.
Mm.
Yeah, definitely.
I think we got to work together on at least for data and keeping our data up to date. That sort of thing. And there's fun.
Okay, nothing else on the strategic plan update. I'll turn it over to Wayne for the Regional Collaborative Committee report.
Nobody wanted to do it, so I got elected chair. Brad Henderson put his name forth. He wants to become a member. Sherry gave an update on recreation to the committee. It was a short discussion on how the funds are going to be distributed within the zones, for and that there would be local representation on each committee for each zone. Modifications to the timeline for the policy development. And there was an update on progress with Coastal Link Trail and a small delay in St. George due to requirements for archaeological testing. I don't know why they keep doing that. Also requested a motion from the committee to fund SNBSC portion of the salary for Sherry for 2022 fiscal year. And there was a discussion about clarification of the role of the committee. And out of all that, we got two motions. So we'll do them.
Yep.
Okay, the first motion is to appoint Brad Henderson as a member of the RCC. Second.
Okay. Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Thank you.
And the second motion was to fund a portion of the salary for the recreation implementation manager for 2022 fiscal year.
For newcomers, we took on an agreement with province, and we were going to cost share the salary of a recreation implementation manager, and it was over I want to say 4 years, and we're coming into the 4th year now, and I think our share was 30.
They're funding 75% of their salary.
They fund 75% of the salary for those 4 years. So this is the last year of that. So that's why we're getting this motion put to us today.
That ends what, in September, I think it is, isn't it? Yeah. So the portion we got to put in is to keep her from September to January 1st.
No, the portion we got to put in is the remainder of her salary for January to September, and then
okay, and the rest of it.
The rest of it.
So we have the motion on the floor. Second. Yep. Second. Thanks, Jim. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
And that's it.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. Planning Management Committee report. Yes.
Yep, we met July the 28th. Paul Bartlett presented a general overview of the local planning division highlights, including record number of permits, training part-time inspector, and new technology options for permit applications. Alex Henderson gave a presentation on the local planning division year-to-year statistics, as well as its progress on its 3-year strategy and operations plan. Upcoming work in the operation plan includes documenting and formalizing policies and procedures for knowledge retention, completion of new rural and municipal plans, and generally improving customers' experience of the service. Paul Bartlett presented a general overview of local planning budget direction and indicated it will not need any significant changes for 2022. The cost of taxpayer around 3 cents per $100 assessment. He showed was one of the lowest in the province of the RSC. Alex Henderson gave an update on the current membership and the need to appoint new members. Alex previously appointed the advertisements of the committee's vacancies on the planning website according to the PRAC bylaw V7.8 for a period of 3 months after Brian Cornish's second and final term concluded. 4 applications were made at that time. PMC is now recommending 2 of those 4 candidates to the board so that they may be appointed to PRAC. Alex Henderson and Dennis Blair covered 2 areas of the PRAC bylaws that we felt needed some updates. Clarification to section 5.2. Municipal residents who sit on PRAC but come from municipalities no longer receiving the PRAC services should not be able to continue to serve on PRAC. Same as any residents from other communities not getting PRAC services. There is a bylaw limit on total 12 seats and a requirement of 50% ratio with LSD seats. So there's a need to preserve spots for possible new municipalities coming on board. Change to section 6.4, before someone's final term on the PRAC is ended, the advertisement for the position should go out 3 months before and not after their term concludes, as it currently states. The reason for that is because if you have 2 or more people go out, that's putting you way down, so you have an harder job to get a quorum. So I'd like to make a vote. The PMC is recommending that the board appoint Courtney LaRue of Manor Sutton LSD and Jerome Holland of the town of St. Stephen to sit on the Planning Review and Adjustment Committee, each for a 4-year term. I'll make that a motion.
Okay. You'll second it? Thanks. Nice. Any other questions on this motion before we go to the vote? Okay. Can I have a show of hands or signify by saying aye?
Aye.
Thank you.
Just, you know, parliamentarian, we gotta make sure we ask.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry about that. Wade and Bonnie. I got a thumbs up from Wade.
Aye, yes.
Sorry. Thank you very much, Alan. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to ignore you there. I won't do it again. Thank you, Alan. Okay.
I'd like to make another motion.
Yes.
Is that a notice of motion, Dennis?
Yeah, we're going to change that. That's why we did the change for the agenda. It wasn't but we're going to put it in as a notice of motion so that people can think it over, and we're recommending that the board repeal PrAC bylaws version 7.8 dated May 2020, replacing with version 7.9 dated August 2021. Here attached to this report. So it will be voted on at the next meeting.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions for Dennis on the Planning Management Committee report? Okay, thank you. Winston, we'll turn it over to you for the Finance and Audit Committee report.
On our July 29th meeting, a follow-up discussion was held about the sale of vacant property next to 33 Wall Street. Mark Porter gave an overview of proposed 2022 tipping fees, the update 10-year capital plan, and the proposed 2022 operating budget. Staff will continue to work with these budgets before another committee meeting to be held in August. August 17th meeting, there was discussion about the purchase more recycling carts as we are almost out. The discussion was whether or not to purchase more at this point, given the uncertainty of the implementation of the provincial PPP program. This conclusion draws by the committee was to wait 2 or 3 months and revisit the question. Now, I think we said we had what, 40 still here?
They're all spoken for.
Oh, they're all spoken for, so we're out. So.
Just a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Sorry, did we order a whole bunch of these? Like
we did.
We did.
We've had a lot of new people move here. We've had a lot of new things built. We went through 400 carts.
When some of the houses were sold, the cart.
Well, okay, so how you get on that? That should probably be tied into the house sale somehow.
No, well, no, it was supposed to stay with the house.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
But they went to the same, so. And I think they probably sold more houses in the last 6 months than they have in 30 years in this.
You should try to lock them up somehow.
I think that was the understanding of them when we put it out, that it stayed with the house.
I think it would cost more to police that than it would to.
Well,
how many we're actually losing, I don't know.
But where are you losing them? Where are they going?
When people sell their house, they take their cart with them and go.
And then they take that to another house?
Well, no, that's where they're moving to.
It might be out in Ontario.
I suspect most of them are here, but I just.
It's not every case that.
No,
there's a few. But
how value we talking about?
We paid $65 for them.
I mean, the only reason I would take one with me would be that I would have it at my other house, and then I wouldn't come after the commission when I am anyway. I don't see where they're going. Well, you know, I don't dispute it, but
I don't know if they're going to the area or wherever. I don't know.
We could probably find out.
Yeah, because they won't pick them up as garbage in them.
There's the one that knows.
I can answer to that. What we currently do, the process is when someone requests a cart, is we go into our database and we check and see if that address already has a cart. Okay. If it does, then we go back and see what happened to the cart that was there. Let's find out. So we do dig into that. Honestly, 70% of the time, it's a cottage that they're turning into a house. it's an old farmhouse that they bought that no one had fit in and didn't have a cart. More times we're getting people who are moving here into a property that didn't have a cart and we didn't deliver one to because it was vacant. Okay. So that's what we're seeing now. There is cases where people are taking their cart and moving. And what we're doing is they're calling us and saying, we're going to move to this address. We want to take our cart. The other place doesn't have, so we're adjusting the numbers to match the specific address. But most of them that we're getting now are people who are moving into the area who are buying older homes that were previously or building or turning cottages into year-round properties.
There's some places I know that people haven't been living there and they're moving back from, say, Ontario, whatever. Because I've taken a couple to St. Croix.
So there wasn't any cart there.
There was no cart there to start with, so.
The very first thing we do is check the database to see if that address has a cart. And then we dig into, well, if there was a cart there, what happened to it?
So when do we get, like, originally we gave them up because of a promotion. Like, when does the promoting stop? And then we say, okay, now they're $40.
Well, that's the question. So Trish checked around. I'll just leave you to talk about it.
I did check around to other areas in what they were doing, a lot with Kent and with regions that are similar to ours. What they did is a lot like us. They did a major push. They delivered a lot of carts, and in some places the municipalities paid for carts and started to distribute them, and then LSDs asked residents to pay out of pocket. It really was kind of across the board, but the general consensus is they did a big push and then they stopped, and it became the residents' responsibility to get a second cart or to buy a cart for themselves.
All right, so when?
Well, we discussed it at the Finance and Audit Committee meeting. And what we felt was the 400 would last us probably about a month or so. Doesn't seem to have happened that way. It looks like they went in a couple of weeks. So we underestimated that. But we were kind of concerned about the PPP program and what that's going to do when it comes in, because we might end up buying containers that their trucks may not be able to use. So it's just a thought that came across in the committee meeting. So there was quite a bit of discussion, a lot of ideas that came out on that. We went through what Trish had brought up, whether we were going to force people to buy their own from now on, or whether we were going to go out and buy some more to see how that was going to go. We also know that there's a backlog on orders. So if you tried to order some today, you can't get them. So we thought, well, the best thing to do would be just to wait another month or two and see how the situation pans out. And then we could make another decision or take another crack at reviewing the logic behind the proposal or any proposal that we would bring forward to the board.
The price has gone up on the carts and the delivery time is gone.
How much the price?
So we're not giving you an answer.
I know, yeah.
Yeah. But we're explaining to you.
No, so maybe we need to get to a point that we can get an answer, I guess.
Yeah.
Because we got to make a decision. Another order, and then next time we start making an order, I'll ask the same question again.
Is the cost of the cart cost us money, or is it saving us money?
Well, it doesn't save us a dime, it costs money.
Well, but if people put their recyclables in the garbage, then it fills up the landfill. Because they did $60.
Yeah. Right.
And that's what a lot of people do.
And that's what a lot of people do.
So until you enforce the pickup, then you can't really force them to buy the cart. But if you were to enforce that, you know, with summer issues, you know, clutter bags or whatever, and the collectors stop taking that, then they've got a choice, you know, if I want to get rid of this now, I buy the cart. So that sounds like a bullying tactic in a way, but if that's what you have to do, then because a lot of people, you know, if they won't spend that $60, they'll just put it in the garbage. So there has to be a way to enforce the garbage part first before you say, okay, we're going to force you to buy a cart. You can't force me to buy a cart. I'm going to say, no, I don't want to buy one.
too many dumpsters out there.
I think force is the wrong word.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, we're just asking to buy it. If you don't buy it, you go get it.
Yeah.
Yes.
But most people are gonna say,
Most
fine,
people are
I don't
fine.
need one. I'm gonna put my cardboard in the garbage.
And then what about the day they're missing? You know, they're gonna say, geez, I should have put something out there because it's piling up on me. I mean, I don't know. It's just that-
They will take cardboard boxes, so if you take a bunch of recyclables and put in a cardboard box, generally speaking, they will usually take that
dry.
Yes, just tie it up and so on.
So I guess the recommendation would be that we hold on another month. Finance and audit will meet in that time frame, and we'll have another review of it. And then we'll come back to the board with some options that we can chew on and hopefully make a decision.
So are you thinking this PPP will start help funding more stuff? Is that what we're thinking? Be a budget, more of a budget line for us as a board?
I'm going to turn that over to Hollis because there's been a lot of discussion amongst the RCs.
Yeah, I don't know. There's legislation, the proposed legislation's out there. It's pretty vague, and we sent our letter stating we weren't happy. I don't know if any of that's going to change one thing about it. Ideally, the way I would like to see it work is that we just continue to do what we're doing today, except that we can invoice Recycle NV for, they come down and do an audit, just like we do pop bottles. They do an audit, figure out how much paper and print packaging is in the recycling that we collect. And then we can invoice them and they would just pay that and that will come out of the produce. That would be the simplest and cleanest way of doing it. I don't think that's what they're going to do, because well, to make a long story short, the industry is, the GFL has bought the Cumberland County landfill in Nova Scotia, which is just across the border. They've also bought a Truro landfill. The GFL is making some moves, and they bought the association that runs the EPR program in BC and a couple of other spots. So it's really kind of looking like this is going to be an industry run thing, and that's who's going to be running it. And I think their intention is to run all of that into, because put together your budget doesn't make enough recycles to make a lot of profit. But if they run it all to Nova Scotia or something like that, that's probably where it's going to end up. I mean, they're going to divert a lot of waste to Nova Scotia, I think, out of Moncton. GFL commercial waste, they could take across the border from Nova Scotia legally. Not residential, but they can do commercial. So hard to say where all that stuff's going to land. It's Recycle and Be running this. These are the same people that run the tire program and paint and oil and electronics, and so I don't have a lot of faith in real nice people about this. So.
Are they collecting that fee from the industry? Recycling budget? Recycle,
yeah, they are going to be collecting, they're the administrator of the money.
All right, so are they getting one? Like in our case was $640,000 or something crazy like that. Like, are they getting that?
I don't think anybody's getting that right now.
Nobody's getting it. Okay. Where is it?
So what's going to happen is producers. So if you're building tissue and canes or something like that, it's making the printed packaging, they're going to be able to charge an additional fee on the products that they sell to recover, to handle the cost of disposing of the packaging that they're selling, just like they do for tires and oil. There's a surcharge. So there's a surcharge on like everything you see in a grocery store. They can choose to show that as this is an extra charge, or they can absorb that and make that a hidden charge. They can do it either way. That money that they collect goes to Recycle and Be to administer whatever they're going to do with the packaging. But it is an industry run thing. Recycle and Be is not a government organization. They're a not-for-profit private run organization. So that's why my concern with the proposed legislation was that the language was way too vague when it came to regional service commissions. It said that they had to give consideration to regional service commissions. That's all it said. So they have to consider the fact that we already have infrastructure, that we already have a recycling depot, that we already have these things in place. doesn't mean they have to do anything about it. But the smart thing to do would be just to continue to let us do what we're doing and figure out a way that we can work together. And I don't know really how that's going to look. Yeah.
No idea on time frame.
Should have been by now. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, we thought it was coming. I don't know, I get into this litany on the newcomers. The PPP program was brought to us. Let me step back. We had a look at how we do recycling here, and we were losing money every year. We're still losing money every year on recycling. Originally, we were taking in, we were losing about $440,000 a year. 40 of that was gotten back when we were selling paper products like cardboard and things like that. So the loss was around $400,000 a year. We then were approached by some, I guess, business people, company folks that were selling the PPP program. Now, this program has been adopted in British Columbia and other provinces, partially in Quebec and other provinces. So it wasn't going to be new to us. They had done some calculations, and it's basically the producer pays a percentage or a part of a cent on every packaged product that they sell. And that money then was to go and be turned over, we thought, to the RSCs that would then pay for the recycling program. Right now, the recycling program is paid through subsidizing the tipping fee. So your tipping fee is, I believe it's still $95, 92, and the, what is it now on the subsidization? Is it 15?
We don't really break it out like that. We just kind of, it's part of the budget, but it works out to somewhere around $20, 18 to $20.
Yeah. So when we first started looking at this, we thought it was $20 is the subsidy that we pay to cover that $400,000 loss per year. So we were looking for a way of trying to get ourselves away from that. And we were looking at the PPP program to do that for us. The government has taken a very somewhat different approach to this. And we're not sure where the money's going. We think it's, if they collect it, it will be going to recycle ND, which doesn't help us a lot here because we still end up paying our money to handle the recycling program that we have. So we've been trying to contact the provincial government representatives to see if we can get that change so that some of that money can flow into the RSC. And as Hollis has stated, we have all the infrastructure and everything, the procedures already in place. So, and that kind of gives you a bit of a rough overall view of what's been going on with this PPP. So we've been waiting a long time for this to come. And we thought it would reduce the cost for municipalities, and that doesn't seem to be the case right now. But it's still a wait and see. We haven't seen the final decisions that have to be made yet on it. Did I capsulate that properly? Okay. Any questions?
I would just make a comment that recycling is saving money for. I mean, at least it wasn't our case the last time we did the math. Like the one year, I think it was $30,000 a year. I don't know if it's still continuing, because things change, but just by recycling, because the municipality or the LSD wouldn't pay for that weight for that one pickup. So that would be a savings. You still got to pay the hauling and all that stuff, but it worked out to some savings.
Yeah. But if we'll just say that this money goes to recycle and B, so somebody still has to pick it up, and if the Regional Service Commission picks it up, they have to pay the Regional Service Commission for the product you pick up.
We don't know that yet.
Right. Well, to me, well, if they don't, you don't pick it up.
Well, that was one of the options that we tossed around, that, you know, if you guys are going to collect all the money and give none of it to us, then you can go get your own goddamn recycling. Excuse my French. We're out of it, but
we'll deliver to your door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a lot to be said yet on this one, and it'll be several months, I suggest, before we.
That's quite a business though. If you get into it, someone else will pick up your stuff for you, get the money. That's a good business.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna turn it back to you, Winston, sorry.
Thank you. There was a discussion about whether or not the Southern New Brunswick Service Commission should divest itself of the speed sign due to the annual software licensing costs. The committee felt that the sign was an asset to the region and from its point of view should be kept. And that was a discussion just with the finance audit. So it turns over to the board here to see if anybody has used the sign. I know we have up there, and it makes people put the brakes on quite fast when they run up against the sign, but it's up to the board whether you want to discuss it any further or not.
We had it in Back Bay too for a while. Quite interesting.
And you do get the stats
Yes,
that you can share with the RCMP afterwards. We use it in the academy as well.
You got, just for my own information, do you find the stats actually prove that it isn't that bad? Like people do feel they're driving fast and they actually aren't?
Yeah, in a couple of locations that was the case. And then in another area, it wasn't. It was in fact people were speeding because they'd always done it that way, and they just kept on doing it. So, yeah. At the other end of town where we thought people were speeding, it turned out that they weren't really all that bad.
So the question is, what's the annual licensing fee to keep it?
It's about $1,500
a year.
Or is it
US, 2,000 Canadian.
So 2,000 a year.
We calculated about 3,000 total.
Well, we budget 3,000 a year for the sign because that's the software, and if we got to fix stuff because stuff gets broken.
And you use it.
We used it. Yeah.
Ask Trish. She's the one that manages the sign. She happens to be
How
here.
much a year is it going? 10 times a year or something? Or well, no, it must be higher because I tried to get it, I couldn't get it.
This year it's been out quite a bit. It hasn't been back more than 2 or 3 days since the beginning of probably June.
So we're all benefiting from having it.
Currently in St. George.
Everybody can benefit from it if they want, even the LSDs.
Yeah.
So, with the changes in the laws around being able to have cameras to charge speeders, why put up the sign? Why not just put up the camera and charge them?
You can't do that yet.
No. The legislation's been changed. Okay. I think it went to, well,
It's been changed to allow it to happen.
Right.
Yeah.
But the municipalities still have to sign on to it and agree.
Oh, they can't collect it.
Well, if I was concerned about the speed, what, anyway.
Yeah.
There's another option now, I guess.
That's kind of like if I buy all these cameras and someone else picks up my garbage, and it's the same sort of thing, but you at least get the benefit of someone handling it.
Well, they'll slow down when they get
yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's true.
I know what we did was we spoke to the RCMP that were working in our area. And what we did was we left it out for 2 days. And then on the third day, we had them sitting behind the speed sign. And there were fines that were put out. So when Dennis, for instance, said it's funny to see the brakes coming on after a few people. The word gets around pretty fast. They're fining people. But if there's cameras, I see what you're saying.
What do you see the benefit?
A reminder while it's there.
Yeah, I would say
like the long term. Is there any?
Oh.
Or like what was your hope? Like if the software is costing $2,000, what's your hope to get from that $2,000? Like 3 speeding tickets.
We're trying to slow people down. It's not the tickets.
But we're
trying to slow
there's
people
other
down.
ways than $2,000 worth of software to slow people down.
Yeah, but $2,000 is spread over all these municipalities. So you start hiring or buying cameras and putting them up and software for that, you're gonna be looking at a whole lot more.
What were you trying to gather from that information you got? What changes did you make or what?
Yeah, I guess for us, I can't speak for everyone else, of course, but for us, it confirms or denies people's opinions of what's happening on those streets. Secondly, it does cause people to slow down in the areas that we put it in. So those, I guess, are the main things. It's taking an active role in the public safety. I guess those are the kinds of things that we pull away from.
So, you know, in every meeting, public meeting that I've gone to, which I haven't been that many, the biggest public safety issue that everybody's talked about is speed. And now we pay, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars per community for policing, and that no longer needs a police officer with the changes in the legislation. Right? And the biggest issue for me is not speeding; it's the kids that I know that are in rehab for drugs. That's, you know, speeding. Don't get me wrong. I think everybody should slow down. Speeding is definitely an unsafe thing, but there's technology now, I think, with the changes in the legislature.
I know we have cameras on Front Street in the cabin, and every once in a while I'll get somebody will come forward with a complaint about wheelers and vehicles doing whatever they do illegally on the Front Street. And then we have the RCMP come in. And so long as we can identify who it is in the vehicle, then that turns into fines. So for example, I won't mention names, but there was one individual got over $10,000 worth of fines. And they don't do that foolishness on Front Street anymore. So it's the cameras do work. I've not been aware of any legislation changes, so that's good news. I'll have to look into that to see.
The speed sign that we have is about what, 5 years old now, maybe more. The reason we bought it originally was that the only one the RCMP had access to was shared between Woodstock, Grand Bay, Westfield, and this area down here. So there was only one speed sign. By having our own, then if you can work with your RCMP detachment and say, we feel there's a speeding issue in this particular area, or there's a danger near this school or something, then by coming to the Regional Service Commission asking, can we use the speed sign and put it up? Then you get the data back. If you put it up for 3 days, you can look at it and say, oh, 72% of the people were abiding by the speed limit, but 28 people were speeding. So that you know whether or not it gives you an idea of whether or not you really do have an issue. If you find that 95% of the people that roam by the school were speeding, then you'd say, well, you have a speeding issue that needs to be addressed.
I forgot.
We actually have that where at our school right now.
Yeah,
I wouldn't mind having that for a few days.
You need to have
for another reason, that being as I know you guys are probably used to it, but now they're starting to enforce the kilometer from school that your kids don't get picked up. But I don't know if you've been to Campbell, but a kilometer from our school either way is not a very good place for kids to walk on. You know what I mean? So it would be nice to be able to use it, maybe show them that there is people driving a little too fast there, and the kids shouldn't be walking there.
Well, from my perspective, for $2,000, I mean, we're buying people recycle carts for nothing, you know, and much more than $2,000 to spend on that. So it's a good investment. And if you're wondering about whether people will slow down when they've seen that, when they see that sign or not, picture yourself going across the Harbor Bridge in St. John. Do you slow down when that sign's off, or do you slow down when it's on? When it's on, you slow down.
If you slow down, you'll get run over.
Yeah. When it's on,
you slow down, you'll get rear-ended.
People keep on trucking through when it's off. So I personally feel that it meets the intent of it, which is to slow people down. And to give you justification to ask the RCP to come in and say, we've done it, we've had our sign for 2 days. This is what we found. 99% of the people are speeding, so we need some enforcement here. And if they have justification, a lot of times that's how they operate, you know. So
yeah.
That's okay.
I just use an example. We haven't had anyone drown in the pool of St. Stephen, but there's still people lifeguards there.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. Like I say,
yeah.
I have a couple of motions. A motion to Southern Brunswick Service Commission sell a vacant lot to the 33 Wall Street property for market value.
Sorry, I'm just going back to that, what are we doing? I mean, are we making a decision about the sign, or we just?
No, we just discussed it, and if we feel that next month we can make it a motion.
Okay.
So
are you gonna make a motion, or should we?
Well, I'll talk to the rest of the finance people and
okay, I just want to know, you should
see what they're gonna do.
Should get the view of the board, like, yeah, maybe only 3 of us here say one, and the rest don't, so.
We're gonna ask for a consensus.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
So the speed sign is available to the LSDs, correct?
Yeah.
Have any LSDs used it?
Well, I guess that's my question. What is the
I know
process?
places
Because half of us are new. How do we know there's a speed? I saw it in that bay, but I wouldn't have known that we could put it on Deer Island.
So there's a speed sign.
So there's a speed sign, yes. And that's,
And if you,
I
the
guess.
process is you contact Trish, because she happens to, there's the speed sign. And she knows the schedule there.
She's very obliging. She'll help you any way she can.
But I feel like for those that aren't here at this table and maybe new in their communities, there has to be a way of sharing information so everybody's aware of what they have access to.
Well, they have to have the board meeting, right? I mean, it's great. It's really, I mean, like, we're actually seeing you guys here now. It's nice. So
Right,
now
because
you guys all know.
yeah, but not all LSDs are on the board.
Oh, right.
That's the point I'm trying to make. Like, I'm here because I made it to the board. But if I wasn't, I'd be sitting home twiddling my thumbs. And unless Harvey said, oh, there's that speed sign, or so I guess there needs to be like, that's my, and this is just, I mean, we're talking about speed sign. It's obviously not high on my priority, but just an idea here to represent the people that aren't in the room. They need to be aware that there's a speed sign, that
something that could be posted on a website, probably assets available or
I'd be surprised if it's
whatever.
not there now somewhere.
It's,
And
I don't know if
meetings
it's
are all
there now
public.
or not, but just procedure to get it, and everything. Just a quick little write-up, and everything's hyperlinked.
So
that's
not-
on there now.
So just so everybody is aware, this board gives me direction to do what I need to do. Sometimes that is in the form of a motion, but sometimes it's just an action point. So I will make this an action point to post that on our site as a option for LSDs as well as municipalities.
Could you not pass that on to Darren McCabe and get him to send it to all the LSDs?
I sure could.
Yeah, I don't see where
That way
we
they're-
answered the first question is, do we still want it or not?
Right, yeah,
Or
we
something else.
still gotta get that, but yeah, so I just got a question. If I'm a LSD, I guess you're not a board member, but I'm still
an LSD chair.
Okay, so I'm still an LSD chair, but not on the board. Do I not get these packages sent to me still? Why?
Not a board member. Now, all of our information is public and posted on the
Okay.
website.
All right, so once it's.
But I don't
think we should still
actively send it out to.
Maybe we should, or maybe they should,
No.
maybe it's two-way street, but it'd be nice if those reps got, or those chairs got the information still, even though they're not active on the board, I think we should make sure.
But this is all posted though.
Online.
Online before the
Yeah,
meeting,
okay,
right?
or at least tell whoever the representative, there it is, it's online, feel free to, okay, thanks.
Your comment?
So how did you pick the LSDs that were on, the board members?
They
How
voted,
did that
they,
work?
they voted for
election.
Like for your board here?
Yep, all the LSD chairs got
Somebody
together.
like me, I didn't have no choice. It was
You don't have a choice, you're on the board.
Right, but these guys, okay, now, because I
All
was
the
confused,
LSDs
there
get
wasn't
together.
a lot of people here, but there were some that were, yeah.
They voted for each other. I have nothing to do with who's on this board. Nothing.
So I guess if you would like, I mean, we can by either consensus or by motion, make a decision on it tonight. Or if you don't feel like you're ready, we can wait and do it next month. So whatever you're.
Well, let's get the
Whatever your
consensus and that will tell us whether we Should pursue it next month. No?
Well, is everybody, can I have a show of hands? And this time I'm gonna look for Wade and Bonnie too, to see their hands. Be keeping the sign, or we, please raise your hand. Okay, I got a thumbs up. I got another hand. So I guess everybody's in support.
Yeah,
so
we could have once and then we'll have as a motion next time around.
Yeah, we'll just hold on. Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Okay, the motion I made earlier was the vacant lot next to 33 Wall Street property for market value to sell.
I'll second it.
And we have a seconder. Okay, Winston and Dennis.
Question.
Before we go to a vote on that, is there any questions on this? Because we got new people here, I'd like to explain to them why we think we should be selling this piece of property.
Explain to me too.
And, yeah.
I must have missed that one.
Oh, okay. Then with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Hollis. I could certainly speak to it, but
so last year we bought property at 33 Wall Street in St. Stephen for the new local planning office, and we moved there. But along with that property came this other PID, which is actually across the road on a corner. It was just included in the sale. Like I didn't care if it didn't really add any value to what we were buying. So anyway, we have this piece of property that we pay $700 a year property tax on. It's zoned R2, so we can't even build anything there we want to. You can only build residential. So we might as well just sell it, I guess. Mm-hmm. It's a building lot. You could put a duplex there. It's a corner property. It's got some value.
Well, I think we discussed the possibility of selling it before we purchased the property, so that we knew what it might be.
We did, yeah.
An advantage to us to get some revenue locked up. So most of us, except the new people, that were involved in that discussion.
So it's just a surplus piece of property in St. Stephen. We can't do anything with it.
The planning office has adequate parking area now, and you don't project needing more parking in the future.
I'm not sure that I could, as I said.
Oh yeah, it's still residential, so
yeah.
So it would present a problem, even have it as a parking lot, perhaps. So.
And for us to vary zoning or grant a variance on that property
to yourselves
is bad form.
Well, you say you're paying $7 for 1,400. I'll let you start talking.
Did we say conflict of interest?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion. So Winston and Dennis, motion and seconded. For all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Wade and Bonnie, I see an aye up there as well. Okay, thank you. You still have a question now?
Well, I guess we didn't say a value, you just said market value.
Market value.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that you just gonna do the deal if it looks good, or are you gonna come back to the board and say
it's probably gonna be 20 grand.
Okay.
Normally for anything that's like $20,000, I would never bring it to the board, right? It's not worth your time, but this is property and I have to. So that's why it's here.
So I guess, is there anything else that we, the board could do with that land? I mean, like, could you donate it to village car share model to put low income housing?
Good point.
Like, what's the $20,000 going to do, right? And when you look at what they're trying to do in Black Harbor, and I mean they're doing a great job. And when we look at the situation that we are in housing, could we donate it to a nonprofit if they'll build nonprofit low income housing? Just and I'm not sure if we even have the jurisdiction to donate taxpayers stuff.
Well, it's not really taxpayer stuff. I mean, it isn't. It isn't. We are a publicly held nonprofit company.
I know how big a deal or an issue today low income housing is in the area, right? And housing in general. So I mean, if we sell it, what do we get out of it? But if we donate it to a nonprofit group that's going out there to get federal money, or they look like they're going to be able to build 12 units at Black Harbor. Hey, maybe they can build a couple in St. Stephen with this land.
Yeah, and leverage the money, the 20,000 may leverage.
Tax.
The $20,000 is a buck a person in the county, right?
But the thing is, when you're zoning wise.
Yeah, it's already, it's already zoned for.
It's already zoned residential.
Zoned R2, so that is multi-residential, up to like a duplex.
I suppose it would be commercial. They're nonprofit, right? So,
yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good thought. We hadn't thought of that. Yeah, had to come up.
I mean, to me, the biggest issue we got around here is getting people in.
Well, we're already voted to sell it, so we better make it.
If we did.
Well, depends on what the board wants to do. You know, we're pretty flexible here.
Yeah, I know, but you still.
I should have spoke up earlier.
You may have to rescind that motion.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the
Well,
motion,
I don't want to, you know, I just want.
we can overturn the motion. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not.
So I would recommend that we overturn the motion and table the idea for 6 months until Hollis has a chance to maybe talk to a few of the nonprofit groups or interested parties and see if there is any interest in it. And Al would be probably the first guy to talk to, seeing as it's in his town.
And there's a huge need for low-income housing in St. Steve.
So I'm not saying put it off the table forever, but
yeah, if
we're not, you know, it hasn't hurt us yet, so it's not going to hurt us to keep it another 6 months or a year, and you know, have a go at it, because that's you know, an excellent idea, really. But things always sound like a good idea.
Yeah.
You got to see who's going to fit in.
Yeah,
if it falls through, you sell it.
But the other thing is, you got to put it out there that it's something you're interested in doing.
Yeah,
it'll just sit there. But
yeah, I'd almost need to put it over RFP or something, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
yep.
Or just let the Alex and all them know that it's possible development opportunity. They would know that we approach all the time.
Yeah, but I'd have to put a because of who we are. I'd have to put our looking for proposals for somebody who wants to develop this piece of property into maybe not low income, but affordable housing.
You'd have to have some conditions.
And you want to give it to a nonprofit. You don't want to give it to
affordable housing.
It doesn't necessarily have to go for nonprofit.
No,
if it's for
I'd have to, in order to do this, I'd have to first of all figure out how to do this, being who we are.
Yeah.
So I think it's an RFP for, let's say, affordable housing to build a duplex on this property on Wall Street. Successful applicants will receive property for
I think it's a good idea.
something like that.
Do we need
I do
to
too. Bring the attention to it
rescind
now.
our
I think they could go to
All
Habitat
right.
for Humanity or any of those organizations.
Mr. Chair, I would like to move that we rescind the motion that we made to sell the property.
For market.
And I'm not, for market value. If we rescind it, then it never happened, and we can make another motion with other wording if we wish. So I would move that we rescind our previous motion.
Second the motion.
Okay. All those in favor of rescinding the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Wade and Bonnie, thank you very much.
Good idea, man.
I think that was a great idea. Good idea. We'll look into it and we'll see what we can
When we
do.
make that motion, we put a time limit on it, so that 10 years down the road, you're not still paying taxes on something that nobody decided, like if nobody takes it, is what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
Hollis, did you say the taxes are only $70?
$700.
Oh, 700.
Yes.
But now it's back in the hands of finance committee.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's that's a good point. Let's take it back to the finance and audit committee and we can review that again.
It's always showing an action thing going on.
You don't want to put too much of a time limit on it because some of these groups, it takes them a long time to get things, you know, in years. They don't want to, you know, restrict them and put some kind of a deadline on where, you know, if they, you know, got to get funding or whatever, and then, you know, all of a sudden, you know, the time's gone before you get the property. So.
Don Kaloran started all this stuff, and he's in Florida now, has been for a year, so it takes a long time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, thank you everyone for being patient with us. That's good. I think we've found a better solution to our problem. Okay.
The second motion is to distribute the 2022 draft budget as presented for the 45-day review period as required for municipalities, rural communities, and LSDs.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table. A seconder for that? Okay. We seconded. And for all those in favor, can I see signify by saying aye?
Aye.
Thank you. Is that everything, Miss?
Okay,
okay, thank you. Financial report is the next thing. Mark Porter.
Thank you. So I'll go into this in a little more depth than I would normally do because we have new members.
Oh, no.
Sorry, Sam. I recognize your voice. You're coming back.
We'll step outside then.
There's two columns. There's our December 31st, 2020 year-end balances and our current statement balance as of the end of July 31st. So the first section is assets. So these are all the things that have future value to the commission. Our cash and bank balances were about $2 million at the end of July. Receivables were $707,000. Accrued investment income of $20,000. HST receivable of $51,000. We have reserve fund investments of $2,845,000 and closure fund investments of $1,729,000. Prepaid expenses are about $173,000. So our total current assets are $7,575,000, and our capital assets, which would be building, land, equipment, things like that. Also, our recycling carts are in there. 12 million. So our total assets are just short of $20 million. And the next section is liabilities. Those are things that the commission owes to other people. So the current liabilities of $750,000, they're just regular trade payables. We have long-term liabilities. The only one there, we have no long-term debt. So we've never borrowed any money to purchase capital assets or to build cells, anything like that. So this landfill closure liability is money that we need to set aside a certain amount every year so that when the site closes in 2063, I think it's the estimated date, it'll probably be longer than that. That's the date we've picked for now. That we'll have to have, when you discount it back to right now, if the site was to close now, we need between $4 and $5 million in the bank to have it fully funded to close in 2063. So this is only the portion based on the capacity of the site that has been used. In our equity section, we have accumulated surplus in total of $17,368,000. But in the first 5 lines, we have different reserve funds. And this is money the government legislation allows us to set aside out of our current year surpluses to be spent in future years. So the operating reserve funds can be withdrawn, and all these withdrawals require a board motion. So anything in the operating reserves, we can take out to pay for expenses in those operating funds. We have 3 different operating funds. One would be our local planning. The other one's cooperative and regional planning. And the third one is solid waste operations. And there's capital reserve funds. So the capital reserve funds can be withdrawn by a motion of the board, but they're restricted for the purchase of capital assets. So if we want to buy a compactor, we could take it out of the solid waste capital reserve, as an example. So the 5 different reserve funds we have. Local planning capital reserve fund has $50,000 in it. That was designed to purchase vehicles as they wear out. Solid waste capital reserve fund has $2,583,000 in it. And our 3 operating reserve funds, the solid waste operating reserve fund has $182,000 in it. The local planning operating reserve has $20,000 in it. and cooperative and regional planning operating reserve has 5,000. And we have remaining accumulated surpluses for each fund listed below that. And then the current surplus for this period from January 1st to July 31st shows as $1,176,000. And I will tell you the actual surplus is lower than that because as I was posting things trying to get the month end done, because of all the turmoil that's happened, that I know there were a bunch that were missing and they didn't get put in for this statement. So my guess probably 100,000 less than that is what the actual surplus is. Next page is the income statement. So this one compares our 7 months year to date with our budget for the year. So total regional planning revenue, this is the money that comes from all the members, 64,000. So it's a fixed amount per month that comes in. We have a gain or actually gain on sale of investments of $126,000. And you'll notice the budget was zero, but this was caused by withdrawing the closure fund investments. The closure fund was previously overfunded. So we had to take money out of the closure fund, and there was a lot of unrealized gains at that point. Government transfers are money that we receive for the recreation coordinator and environmental trust fund. Sale of recyclables, 9,000, not much there. Investment income, 37. Other revenues of 11,000. Member tipping fees are 527,000. So that's just a little more than where we should be at this point in time. Western Valley Regional Service Commission. Western Valley's the Regional Service Commission just to the north of us. They don't have a landfill, so they ship roughly half their waste here, and the other half goes to the Regional Service Commission landfill to the north of them. And just the way they work seasonally, we receive a lot more of our revenue in the first part of the year than the last part. So basically at this point, we've received about 82% of what revenue we expect to receive for the year. So over the summer months, it tends to drop off as they haul waste mostly to the north. Industrial, commercial, and institutional. So that waste there is 536,000. So it's come up from what we had budgeted. That was low because of COVID. We didn't know how long COVID would last. Construction and demolition waste is 49,000 year to date. That really depends on when projects commence. Cover material, 133,000 in revenue already. And that cover material, it is a waste product that we're allowed to use as alternate daily cover over the waste that's tipped in the landfill. So a lot of places are required to buy gravel, but over waste at the end of the day. But we're allowed to use this material, so we have a revenue source, plus it saves us the expense on the other end. Regulated waste, not much there. Washington County. So we've received in 883,000 of our $1,147,000 budget. And that year was also budgeted low because we were never sure where that US waste is going to go. If it's going to come to us or to our competition. So within New Brunswick, waste has to stay within the region where it's generated, or at least the residential waste. And so anyway, with Washington County, we've already received 77% of our revenue for US waste. Local planning revenues, 371,000. So once again, that's the money that comes from the members that receive planning services. It's a fixed amount per month. And then we have our second previous year surpluses for solid waste and local planning. we're required to do a balanced budget. So whatever surplus or deficit we have in a given year, 2 years in the future, we take that into our budget to bring our budget back to balance. So Paulus had mentioned before, in solid waste, there was a large surplus in 2019 because we had adjusted the closure fund, and it resulted in extra revenue to the operating fund. So there's $1,345,000 that's going to be taken in 2021 to use up that second previous year surplus. Local planning, it's the same thing. Have a surplus, that's 7 months worth of money. So to the end of July, revenues are about $4 million. Expenses, we have payroll, we have physical services. So we spend a lot of our money on capital expenditures. So this year there's a lot of things to be purchased and they just haven't all been spent yet. The cell construction really just started in July, or no, July, something like that. That's the big stuff in there. So just the admin expenses are 92. Local plan expenses, they're just totaled by sections. So we have planning services, inspection services, the administrative part of it, and fiscal services. Waste reduction costs are $191,000, so it's about half of what the yearly budget was. Corporate services, those are the expenses that belong to all three departments. They belong to local planning, cooperative and regional planning, and solid waste. So the governance expenses, this is expenses for the board, $19,000 year to date. Administrative other, which is the administrative salaries, the lights, power, whatever. Office supplies, $206,000. Cooperative and regional planning. The regional planning cost, that's the cost towards developing a regional land use plan. And regional sport, rec, and culture, there's $51,000 in there. That's mainly salaries. And fiscal services would have been the second previous year deficit coming in for cooperative and regional planning. So the statement shows a net surplus of $1,176,000 for the current year. Okay, the next page is a summary income statement. So the other 2 pages there, the income statement and balance sheet, are all a conglomeration of all 3. And this one is designed to show you a little better what each individual department does. So the first one is the summary. It's got the total revenues, the total expenses. So those are all summarized below. I'll deal with all those afterwards. We'll go to the bottom of the page. It's the corporate expenses. So those are some of the ones I was talking about before: the governance, the administrative, so the executive director, financial management, other admin services. And it shows how the costs are allocated to, like, out of the administration costs, most of it goes to solid waste services, $172,000. 31,000 goes to local planning and 22,000 to cooperative regional. Next page is just the solid waste statement. So it shows all our income sources, tipping fees from our members. The other sources was the business waste, the RSC to the north of us, US waste, and construction demolition. Special waste. Then we have recycling, government transfers, the surplus of second previous year, the gain or loss on investments, investment income. So overall, when you look at the expenses down below compared to the revenue, the solid waste department here has $1,145,000 of our surplus for the 7 months. Local planning is on the next page. The revenues and expenses are broken down there the same way. And so year to date, it shows a surplus of 25,947. So those are the members that are receiving planning services and building inspection services. Cooperative regional planning is the last section, and it shows a year-to-date surplus of $756. That's the smallest of all our departments. Any questions?
Mark, I had a question about.
Sorry, Brian.
I'm never good at finance, you know that. But where does this $700,000 from the post-closure fund, where does this appear in the budget or in the financial statement? There was a motion, I know, in April, last meeting, to move $700,000 from the post-closure fund to the operating fund. How was that done, and where does it appear?
Okay. Okay, that stems back to the first page we talked about, the comparative balance sheet.
Yeah.
So in there's a line called landfill closure liability.
I see that, yeah.
And so every year we have to expense a certain amount to pay for our expected closure costs based on the capacity of the site that's been used up, right? Based on cubic meters.
Right.
So if you look at December 31st, 2020, there's about 1.4 million there in that column to the right.
Yes. Yeah.
It used to be 2 million and something. And basically what happened, we looked at the site and said, well, all the sites originally were projected to last for 25, 40 years, 50 years maybe. And so our site is kind of unique in that respect, in that there's all kinds of land, and you know, it's all woodland all that way, all owned by the province. So our site could last basically forever. And we'll be able to accept waste here when all the other sites in the province are filled up. Anyway, okay. So that's what happened. We looked at it, and that was the main assumption that changed. So if you were to look at our annual financial statements, that in there's a note, I think it's note 10 maybe or 13. And it talks about the closure fund and all the different assumptions that are in there.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
As a nonprofit, the other question I have is a nonprofit, like the capital assets, are they depreciated or amortized?
Yes.
At what rate?
Depends on what they are.
But the normal Canadian Revenue Agency rates, probably?
No, based on their expected life.
Okay.
So maybe, for instance, let's say the landfill compactor, it might be amortized over 7 years or 10 years. Whereas you have a vehicle, maybe, I don't know, maybe it's 5 years.
Okay.
Like when they're in the cell, they don't last very long. It's 30, and it's hard on them.
That's something the board decides, or who decides?
No, it's really, you kind of look at the asset and say, how long is it going to last? So depending on what it is, like buildings, maybe they're in there for 40 years. Okay. They were originally set up when the landfill was constructed.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
So I'd like to go back to your question. We took that $700,000 out of that fund, and it went into the operating budget. And that operating budget money then went where, that 700 and some thousand.
The 700,000 is sitting in the cash and bank balances. It came out as a withdrawal from the investment company, and the withdrawals were mainly in the stock market where the gains were triggered.
Mm-hmm.
That's why on the income statement there's 125,000 gains, because it got pulled out in the month of May. So we wanted to withdraw it before construction season started, because that was where we were planning on spending that money.
We had budgeted for this in 2021, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was part of the plan.
Yeah.
We knew that it was going to come out, and we knew that it was coming out of the stock market, the majority of it.
Right.
And so you couldn't just go in and sell it all at once. So we went to the oh my gosh, what's the name of the company?
RBC.
Yeah, RBC Financial, they look after our investments for us. And so he recommended that we take it out over a certain number of months. And so we agreed with that. And that's why it comes out at that 100 and whatever thousand.
It's also important to note that our investments are guided by, we don't just invest whatever we want. There's actually a guiding document of what we can and can't invest in, right? So it's a very conservative guidance for our portfolio. So there's a lot of GICs and stuff like that. So cashing those is not sometimes that easy, although it was easy to do this time just because of the time. But it had to be balanced. So the drawdown, we couldn't just draw it all in stock. We couldn't just draw it all in GICs. It had to balance out so that our portfolio still remained balanced the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah. It was a very good question.
Might be a good idea to have Jeff back for a presentation for new members to help them along. And we had talked about he was going to do 2 or 3 presentations a year, so we should be just about due.
Yeah, that's it.
That's talking to him today, actually.
I'm just thinking of bringing them up to speed a little bit quicker.
Any other questions?
What's going on?
Any other questions for Mark? Wade and Bonnie, any other questions for Mark? Okay, thanks, Mark. Normally at this point, we go to the next date and time of the next regular meeting, but is there anything else that needs to be brought up, or you want any questions, especially from newcomers? Because it's always fun when you come to your first meeting, right? You don't know anything about what's going on. You know very little. So we like to keep it wide open here. If you have any questions or comments that you see and you're not quite sure what you're seeing or hearing, please feel free to jump in anytime. And we're all about being open and transparent here. So. Our next date and time of next meeting, September 23rd, 2021 at 6 p.m. I don't think there's any problem with that, but yeah, it's our standard regular time. Do we have any questions from the public?
Should we explain about our like stipends and stuff to the people? Have that already been done? Where they can put in their.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know.
Maybe they've already been. Maybe they've done that.
Yeah.
They actually, Holly, she met with them all the new people, right? Yeah. Also, you've done all that. And you just forget.
Yeah. Okay. That's a good point. Nothing from the public.
Nope, I got nothing here.
Okay.
I move we adjourn.
Right on. I was waiting for him.
See you later, everyone.
Night, Wade. Night.
Wait. Oh,
Yeah.